Imagine the excitement of moving into a new home, a fresh start, a place to create memories, and a sanctuary to call your own. But what if that dream turned into a nightmare? What if the walls held secrets, the floors creaked under unseen footsteps, and the shadows seemed to move on their own? In these homes, happiness quickly gave way to terror, as their new owners discovered they weren't the only ones living there. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we're sharing 3 spine-chilling stories of people whose new homes came with far more than they bargained for. These tales will make you think twice about signing that lease or picking up those keys. Get ready to be spooked. These are the true stories of new house horrors. Story 1, The Uninvited Tenant by Rebecca Alden. My name is Rebecca Alden, and a year ago, my fiancé Eric and I moved into what we thought was our dream home. It was a charming 2-story house on the edge of town, surrounded by towering oak trees and boasting a picturesque front porch. It seemed perfect for starting our life together. We purchased the house from an elderly woman who had lived there for decades. She was kind but reserved, and during the sale, she seemed hesitant to let the house go. As she handed over the keys, she gave us an odd warning. The house has a personality of its own. Take care of it, and it'll take care of you. Eric and I exchanged amused glances, chalking her words up to sentimentality. The first few weeks were blissful. We spent our days unpacking and decorating, and the house quickly began to feel like home. But it wasn't long before strange things started happening. It began with small, almost laughable occurrences. Doors would creak open despite being shut tightly. Light bulbs seemed to burn out far too quickly. Eric joked that the house was just breaking us in. Then one evening, as we were settling in for a movie night, the lights in the living room flickered before going out completely. We checked the breaker box, but nothing seemed to miss. The power returned a few minutes later, leaving us puzzled. A week later, I was home alone, painting the guest bedroom. Eric was working late, and I decided to make progress on our long to-do list. As I moved to grab a paintbrush from the floor, I noticed movement in the corner of my eye. When I turned, I could have sworn I saw a figure standing in the doorway, a fleeting shadow that disappeared as quickly as it appeared. I dismissed it as a trick of the light and kept working, though my heart pounded in my chest. That night, I told Eric about what I'd seen. He teased me, calling me jumpy, but I could see the unease in his eyes. We both laughed it off, but the tension between us grew. Things escalated a few days later. Eric was in the kitchen making coffee while I was upstairs folding laundry. Suddenly, I heard him call out, "Rebecca, are you downstairs?" I rushed to the landing, confused. "No. Why?" I asked. Eric's face was pale as he explained he'd heard footsteps pacing in the living room, accompanied by a faint humming. Determined to find a rational explanation, we searched the entire house together. Every door was locked, every window shut tight. There was no one there but us. The final straw came one night as we were lying in bed. Around 3 a.m., we both woke to the sound of faint whispers. The voices were low and indistinct, like a hushed conversation happening just outside our door. We held our breaths, listening intently. The whispers grew louder, then abruptly stopped. The silence that followed was deafening. Eric grabbed a baseball bat and opened the bedroom door. The hallway was empty, but as he stepped out, the floorboards creaked beneath his feet. That's when we saw it, a single wet footprint in the middle of the floor. It was small, like that of a child. Terrified, we spent the rest of the night in the car, parked at the end of our driveway. The next morning, we contacted the elderly woman who had sold us the house, desperate for answers. She hesitated before finally telling us the truth. Years ago, a little boy who lived there had drowned in a nearby creek. His family had left the house shortly after, unable to cope with the loss. She admitted that over the years she had also experienced strange occurrences, but had learned to live with them. "He doesn't mean any harm," she assured us. "He's just lost." Eric and I couldn't bear to stay in the house after that. We sold it within months and moved into a small apartment in the city. To this day, I still think about the little boy, his lonely whispers echoing through the halls of our once-dream home. Was he reaching out for help or simply trying to remind us that he was still there? Some nights I find myself staring into the shadows, listening for the faint sound of humming that I'll never forget. Story 2, The Locked Room by Nathan Ellis. My name is Nathan Ellis, and last year, my wife Emily and I bought a beautiful old house that came with more than we bargained for. We had been searching for months when we stumbled upon it. A grand Victorian-style home with a wraparound porch and ivy creeping up its walls. It was love at first sight, despite its slightly worn appearance. The house had been unoccupied for years, and the real estate agent mentioned that the previous owner had passed away without any heirs. The house was sold as is, and one of the upstairs rooms was locked. The agent explained that the previous owner had kept it sealed and no one had the key. We thought it was odd, but assumed it would be a simple matter to replace the lock later. Emily and I were thrilled to start our new chapter. We spent weeks cleaning, painting, and filling the house with our belongings. The locked room became an afterthought, just another item on our long to-do list. But it wasn't long before strange things began happening. The first incident occurred late one night. We were in the living room watching a movie when we heard a loud thud from upstairs. Startled, we paused the movie and listened. The sound came again, like something heavy falling to the floor. Emily clutched my arm, her eyes wide. "I'll check it out," I said, trying to sound braver than I felt. I grabbed a flashlight and crept upstairs, my heart pounding. The hallway was silent, but as I passed the locked room, I felt an icy draft. It didn't make sense. The windows were shut and the door was sealed tight. I shook my head, chalking it up to my imagination, and returned downstairs. The next morning, Emily and I decided to try opening the locked door. We used a crowbar, and with some effort, the old wood splintered and the door creaked open. The room was empty, save for a single rocking chair facing the window. The air inside was thick and musty, as though it hadn't been disturbed in decades. We didn't think much of it at the time, but over the next few weeks, the atmosphere in the house changed. Shadows seemed to linger in corners longer than they should, and we often heard faint creaks and whispers, especially at night. The rocking chair in the unlocked room became a source of unease. Emily swore she heard it creaking when no one was in the room. One night, as we were getting ready for bed, I noticed a strange smell, like burnt wood. It seemed to be coming from the locked room. I went to investigate and found the rocking chair slowly rocking back and forth. There was no draft, no explanation. My chest tightened with fear, but I forced myself to step inside. That's when I saw it, faint scorch marks on the wooden floor beneath the chair. They formed a circular pattern, as though something had been burned there long ago. I called Emily over, and her face went pale. "This feels wrong, Nathan," she whispered. "We need to leave." We decided to spend the night at a hotel and called a paranormal investigator the next day. The investigator, a middle-aged woman named Clara, spent hours in the house. When she emerged from the locked room, her face was grim. "This house has a history," she said. "The previous owner dabbled in seances. That room was where they conducted their rituals. Something was summoned, but it wasn't sent back." Clara performed a cleansing ritual, but the unease never fully left us. Over the next few weeks, the strange occurrences lessened but didn't disappear entirely. We often felt watched, and the rocking chair remained a constant reminder of what we'd uncovered. Eventually, we decided to sell the house and move on. As we packed our things, I couldn't help but glance at the locked room one last time. The rocking chair was still, but I knew better than to believe the house was empty. To this day, I wonder what might have happened if we hadn't unlocked that door. Some things I've learned are better left undisturbed. Story 3, The Uninvited Guest, by Lila Thornton. My name is Lila Thornton, and moving into our new home was supposed to be a fresh start for my husband, James, and me. We had just relocated to a quiet suburb after years of city living. The house was perfect, modern yet cozy, with a spacious backyard and a friendly neighborhood. But from the moment we moved in, I felt an unease I couldn't explain. The first few days were chaotic, but exciting. Boxes were scattered everywhere, and we spent our time unpacking and arranging furniture. It wasn't until our third night in the house that the strangeness began. James had fallen asleep early, exhausted from the move, while I stayed up to organize the kitchen. As I sorted through utensils, I heard what sounded like faint footsteps upstairs. My first thought was that James had gotten up, but when I went to check, he was still sound asleep. I brushed it off, thinking it was the house settling, but the noise continued over the next few nights. The footsteps were always soft, deliberate, and confined to the upstairs hallway. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, but deep down, I knew something wasn't right. One evening as we were eating dinner, James froze mid-bite and stared at the staircase. "Did you see that?" he asked, his voice low. "See what?" I replied, my stomach tightening. "I thought I saw someone standing at the top of the stairs," he said, his face pale. I turned to look, but the staircase was empty. We spent the rest of the evening in uneasy silence, both of us trying to rationalize what he'd seen. Things escalated a week later. I was home alone, folding laundry in the bedroom, when I heard a door slam downstairs. My heart leapt and I grabbed my phone, ready to call James. As I crept down the stairs, I saw the front door wide open. The strange thing was, I had locked it earlier, and the deadbolt was still engaged. I called James and told him what happened. He assured me it was probably a draft, but I could hear the doubt in his voice. The final straw came a few nights later. We were both in bed when we heard a loud crash from the living room. James grabbed a baseball bat and headed downstairs, with me following close behind. The coffee table was overturned, and the framed family photo we'd placed on the mantel was lying shattered on the floor. As James picked up the pieces, he muttered, "We need to figure out what's going on here." The next day, we contacted a local historian to see if the house had any unusual history. What she told us made my blood run cold. The house had belonged to a man named Victor, who had lived there alone for decades. He was reclusive and rumored to be deeply paranoid, convinced that people were trying to break into his home. After his death, neighbors reported hearing strange noises coming from the house, but no one dared investigate. That night, we decided to try and confront whatever was in the house. We set up a camera in the living room and left it running while we slept. The next morning, we reviewed the footage, and what we saw still haunts me. Around 2 a.m., the camera captured a shadowy figure moving across the room. It was faint but unmistakable, a tall, dark silhouette gliding past the furniture. The figure stopped in front of the camera, and though its face wasn't visible, the energy it radiated was oppressive. We packed our bags that day and moved into a hotel. Over the next few weeks, we made arrangements to sell the house. We disclosed the strange occurrences to potential buyers, and eventually a young couple bought it, unfazed by the stories. To this day, I wonder if Victor's paranoia had been justified. Perhaps he wasn't imagining intruders after all. Thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more creepy stories. Which of these stories gave you a chilling experience? Let us know. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and remember, sometimes the scariest stories are the ones that are real.